Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a B-movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie Wolvesbayne. So I didn't know anything about Wolvesbayne before I watched it. I knew it was going to be a horror sort of with werewolves in it because of the title, but that's kind of really all I knew. And what I got was actually surprisingly good. Now, Wolvesbayne maybe is a bit of a misleading title because it's kind of more to do with vampires than werewolves. So the story really is focuses on a group of evil vampires who are trying to sort of resurrect Lilith, who is the sort of the original vampire and ultimately the most powerful. Now, within this world, we've also got werewolves and probably other supernatural creatures that are kind of touched upon, but not really in the film, and also like human vampire or supernatural hunters. And I guess the story's kind of protagonist is, if you like, is a man who is pulled into a situation when he's bitten by a werewolf and gets sort of embroiled in all the fun, you might say. He starts to sort of learn obviously what it is to be about a werewolf, sort of learning from another werewolf that he sort of meets along the way, and kind of learning about all these other sort of supernatural creatures, all the politics that are sort of going on behind it. And they ultimately sort of join forces with the sort of the vampire hunters to try and take down Lilith and their kind of supporters. I like to have a quick look online and see what the general feeling is about films, and this one was relatively negative, and I don't really know why. I actually thought this was a pretty decent film. So let me start off with my negatives first of all. I've got maybe two sort of real negatives of this one, and to be fair, they're ones that you can expect to a certain degree with like a lower budget B movie. So the first one is some of the acting and some of the dialogue were a little bit clunky and a little bit cheesy, I have to say. Not terribly so. I mean, I think if you're going to go into watching like a TV movie or a B movie, you do expect that. You're not going to expect anything too outstanding, first of all. But yeah, there was a couple of occasions when maybe the sort of dialogue was a little bit stilted. And the second thing I maybe have to say, this is probably the one thing that bothered me slightly more, was when they actually have action scenes. I didn't think the action scenes were particularly well shot, especially the sort of the gun battles that they have. I didn't think they were particularly exciting to look at, and some of the hand-to-hand combat seemed a little bit, fake to me. So what did I like about it? This was actually a surprisingly layered film, and it reminded me a lot of the Vampire Masquerade series, if you are aware of that. So it was a lot more complex than I thought it was going to be, than your kind of like your standard B-movie sort of fodder, if you like. So we learn that there's this kind of all these sort of different vampire clans. Some of them are kind of like good vampires, if you like, while some are sort of evil. And so some of these clans have different sort of political agendas that sort of put them at odds with each other. There's actually a kind of truce that have been put by with some of the vampires, with the hunters as well. In a similar story with the werewolves, we kind of see, an evil werewolf, and obviously kind of really the main two characters are kind of like a good werewolves, if you like. So that was pretty decent, I thought. And the other thing I really liked about it is the main character here, played by Jeremy London, is actually a bit of an asshole, and he's very different to your standard sort of, especially kind of B movies, just typical good guy. I mean, we see him and he's basically a kind of property developer, and he's basically a bit of a selfish asshole. And he's not all the way. He's completely unlikable. For example, we have one scene where he's flagged down by a woman who's kind of broken down and needs help, and he helps her, but he's kind of complaining about it and sort of says he'll help her out, but he can't really stay with her and needs to sort of go off and do his own thing. So that's what I mean. He's not your typical very good cookie cutter good guy, but at the same time he's not so much of an asshole. He's a complete stereotype. So I actually quite like the way they kind of got him. He's just a bit of a dick ultimately, but you kind of still like him. And what I also liked about him, when he sort of ultimately starts to sort of realise that there's something sort of supernaturally wrong with him, I think his reactions are just very good. And I think it's kind of almost, well, you don't really know what's going on. You're suddenly finding yourself, there's a slaughtered pig in your front room, how you'd react to it, and he just kind of like is wandering around in shock and doesn't know what to do. I mean, apart from him, the other characters, I guess maybe you could argue a little bit two-dimensional. Mark Dacascos is kind of the bad guy, and he doesn't really get much of the characterisation other than the fact he's the bad guy. Lilith, played by Yancy Butler, is very much sort of chewing up the scenery and looking like her veins are going to explode from her head at any minute, which is kind of quite fun with her, and she kind of looks quite menacing. And I have to say, the actual vampires themselves were actually quite vicious, and you got the impression that they were very sadistic. There's a couple of scenes where they're sort of killing and torturing humans, and it reminded me of Hostel, if nothing else. So I actually thought this was a pretty decent film with a surprising amount actually to it. Now, the actual film ends like it's going to continue into a TV series. I don't know if this was actually a feature-length pilot for a TV or possible TV series. Like, I think it may have been, or whether they intended to make it like a series of films. But overall, I actually thought this was a bit of a hidden gem, and I don't let the kind of like the title fool you. It's not just about werewolves; it's about a whole bunch of supernatural stuff. And if you like things like, as I say, the Vampire Masquerade sort of role-playing game, or kind of Underworld to a certain degree, I think you'll really get a kick out of this film if you don't mind them slightly lower budget. But I have to say, I didn't think the effects were too bad at all, to be honest with you. I thought the werewolf effects and the vampire effects are all fairly good for this kind of budget. So 7 out of 10 for me. I enjoyed it. Go check it out. Bye for now.